Hi everybody, I'm Erin, and I'm joined today by Aggie, Kristen, and Susan. 2020 marks 100 years since the publication of Agatha Christie's first novel, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, the book that introduced the world to the character Hercule Poirot. We're celebrating 100 years of Christie today with some recommendations from the best-selling novelist of all time, the Queen of Mystery, Agatha Christie. Susan, why don't you go ahead and get us started with your recommendation?
Awesome. Well, I am a lifelong Agatha Christie fan, and so I was so excited that we were doing this for her, for our book chat this week. Full disclosure, I've read them all. I've named my car Agatha. It's all true. Well, it was very difficult for me to narrow down which one I was going to pick, but with Halloween just passed, I thought I'd talk to you about the book Hallowe'en Party. The book was first published in 1969 and starred her famous sleuth, as you've already mentioned, Hercule Poirot. I picked this particular book because it features Ariane Oliver as well. Mrs. Oliver is one of Poirot's friends and is a famous mystery writer with her own detective who is from Finland. It has been suggested and has also been confirmed that Mrs. Oliver is indeed, in fact, Mrs. Christie's alter ego. Mrs. Oliver is quick-witted, observant, and thinks that the police force would be much more successful if run by a woman. It is in this story, the Hallowe'en Party is for the children of the village of Woodley Common. Everyone is really pleased to have a famous mystery writer in attendance, Mrs. Oliver. 13-year-old Joyce announces to one and all that she has seen a murder. It happened several years ago, so she wasn't aware that it was a murder at the time, but now that she's older, she realizes it was a murder. No one really believes Joyce. She is known to brag, make things up. Everyone just kind of ignores her, except somebody was actually paying attention. Joyce is found drowned in the bobbing for apple bucket near the end of the party. Mrs. Oliver calls her friend Hercule Poirot to help her find out who is responsible. This is a good one. You can find Hallowe'en Party in our print and audio collection at the library, as well as an ebook on Hoopla. And you can also see on Hoopla the masterpiece mystery film starring David Suchet as Hercule Poirot and Zoe Wanamaker as Mrs. Oliver. So check this out. Hey, how about you, Kristen?
Thanks, Susan. I chose The Mousetrap, which can be found in the book Mousetrap and the Other Plays, which can be found at Merchant Square Branch or on Hoopla. At the beginning of the play, we meet the Ralstons, a young couple who have recently started a bed and breakfast at Monkswell Manor. Their guests, expected and unexpected, start to arrive amidst a snowstorm. Shortly after everyone arrives, it becomes very obvious that no one's leaving. Not surprisingly, we shortly after that have a murder. As things start to unfold, everyone realizes that they have secrets that connect them to each other and also to a crime that happened several years in the past. I won't reveal anymore. Mrs. Christie was very specific about this with her play. She wanted people not to talk about the very end because she was afraid that if everybody found out about it beforehand, they would not come to the play. I chose The Mousetrap not just because it's a great mystery, but also because it has this great trivia behind it. In 1947, the Queen was asked, "What would you like for your birthday?" on BBC Radio. What she decided is that she would like to have Miss Christie write her a mystery for the radio. And she did this. She called it The Three Blind Mice. Unfortunately, that name had already been taken for a stage play, so when she decided to do the stage play, she chose the name The Mousetrap. The story was actually inspired by a crime that happened in England before she wrote this. It was actually a huge scandal in England, and it helped to change the foster laws in England. So if you're interested, it's the Dennis O'Neill case. Very interesting, very sad. Another thing that is really interesting about The Mousetrap, it is the world's longest running play. It opened in the West End in London in 1952, and it has been going strong until, unfortunately, COVID has forced it to go into hiatus. However, the St. Martin's Theater has plans to open as soon as the restrictions are lifted. So, what did you choose, Aggie?
Well, as you know, I'm a big movie person as well. I have read, excuse me, some Agatha Christie's in the past, but I really, really loved, with the news that Flix is reopening, I remember one of the first movies I saw there was Kenneth Branagh's 2017 adaptation of Murder on the Orient Express. And it was a gorgeous adaptation, great cast, all-star cast with Kenneth Branagh, Johnny Depp, Daisy Ridley, just great cast, and it's the classic story of, again, Hercule Poirot. And he's traveling back from the Middle East, ends up getting on this luxury train, the Orient Express, to travel back to London. And as the train ends up being stopped because of a small avalanche, a murder happens, and everybody who's passengers on the train, ironically, kind of they're kind of know each other, but it's lucky Poirot is on the train, and his task is to solve the mystery. So, like I said, it's a gorgeous adaptation. It's a classic Christie book, first published in 1935. So, let me make sure that 1934. I'm sorry. And it's just one of the great classics, and it's got an exotic location, you know, and great scenery. And it was pretty successful when the film came out a few years ago. So Kenneth Branagh decided that he wanted to make a Christie cinematic universe, much like Marvel or other properties of that nature. And they have already filmed an adaptation of another one of her great books, Death on the Nile. Unfortunately, with the COVID, it has been finished in production, but there's no release date yet for that. But it is, as soon as things look up for theaters and things like that, then we'll see the second movie in that universe. There was also a great 1974 adaptation with an all-star cast as well, directed by Sidney Lumet, that was a great director of the early 70s. And speaking of the late Sean Connery, was one of his great non-Bond roles. And it also starred Lauren Bacall and Ingrid Bergman. So that one's a nice one to see how they did it, you know, several years ago, and compare it to the modern adaptation that Kenneth Branagh did. I'd also like to mention that, as Susan said, on Hoopla, there are lots of the Miss Marple, who we haven't mentioned, another one of Christie's great characters. A lot of Miss Marple and Poirot adaptations that were originally filmed for the BBC, available instantly on Hoopla. We also have them on physical disc here at the main library. You're welcome to put them on hold to transfer them over to the West Branch. But there's such a vast amount of Christie film as well as book out there. And there's actually a rare film called Agatha about her famous disappearance in the 20s, where that was never really solved about what happened to her, what she did during this period. But it's an interesting film starring Timothy Dalton, and I highly recommend that too. So there's just so much out there. It's hard to do this in a little chat, but Agatha Christie is always going to be one of the greats, and I'm glad she's still as popular as ever.
I'm so glad Aggie mentioned Miss Marple, because Miss Marple is one of my favorite literary characters of all time, and I am going to talk about the 450 from Paddington, which does feature Christie's Miss Marple character, and it sold for a whopping $2.95 when it debuted in 1957. This is one of my favorite Marple books, which is strange because it does not heavily feature the character of Miss Marple that much. The 450 from Paddington is about Mrs. Elspeth McGillicuddy, and Mrs. McGillicuddy is on her way to visit her old friend Jane Marple for Christmas by train when suddenly a blind in one compartment on a passing train flips open, and she sees what she thinks is a man strangling a woman on the other train. So when she heads over to see her friend Jane, of course it helps that your friend is a great detective, and the two women and some of their friends help them figure out what really happened on the 450 from Paddington. This book was, of course, adapted into film in 1961, a TV series in 1987, and 2004, which, as Aggie mentioned, those are all available on Hoopla. You can check out 450 from Paddington in print, as print or large type from the library at Merchant Square, or request for pickup over at our West Branch location with our curbside service. We also have 450 from Paddington and many other Christie works, whether that be audiobook, ebook, film, TV, a lot of the rare things, short stories, plays, in our Hoopla digital collection, which has no holds and no waiting period at hoopladigital.com. Thank you so much to Susan, Kristen, and Aggie for discussing Agatha Christie today. We could have gone on for a whole hour or so about this, but we'll try to keep it short for you today. Join us again as we have more book recommendations for you next week, and happy reading. Bye.
Bye.